Okay, one of my favorite things is talking and connecting over food. And that's why I'm so excited about our special guest this morning on Spirit 105.3. My friend Aybars is here from the Al-Maidah Initiative in Seattle. Aybars, welcome to the morning show.
Hi, it's great to be here.
It's great to be here with you. I heard that you had a radio bug when you were a kid. You wanted to be on the radio.
I did. I grew up listening to 660 WFAN in New York City.
Me too.
Oh, really?
Yes,
Oh,
I was a
wow.
Mets fan.
Me too. Oh, my gosh.
Let's go Mets.
Right.
See it on 9. That's the TV commercial. But
Right.
wow.
And then they had Don Imus and Howard Stern. And, you know, before I got saved, I was a big fan of Howard Stern.
Wow.
And I wanted to be the next Howard Stern.
Okay, I feel like I want to talk bagels and New York radio and pizza and all that stuff. But I want to ask you, you just said before you got saved. So how did you come to Christ? What happened? What's your story?
I mean, just like the really short story was I came from, I was born in Turkey. My father was from Afghanistan.
Wow.
He was a refugee, and he met my mother in the mid-'70s, and they had 4 boys, and we wound up moving to the United States because of political turmoil in Turkey.
Wow.
And growing up there, you know, in New Jersey as a Muslim around all Catholics, it was kind of weird.
Yeah.
You feel kind of isolated. So
Sure.
I was trying to find my own way and my own identity and people. And after a time, I rejected Islam because of, you know, some hypocrisy that I had noticed among people who were practicing it, and just kind of invented my own religion. I like to call transcendental pharmaceuticalism, where it's like hanging out with all the wrong people, doing all the wrong things, and believing whatever I wanted to believe about God.
Sure.
And when I was 23 years old, you know, that lifestyle had its consequences. I wound up in jail, handcuffed to a bench next to some unsavory people. So that was my low point. And I remember looking up and thinking, you know, God, get me out of here. I like to tell people that's when I started calling on the name of the Lord. After that, I started investigating religions and, you know, trying to figure out what I really believed. I turned back to Islam.
Did you?
I had like it was in the process of recommitting myself to it after talking to my dad. And one day I'm going to write a book. It's going to be called A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Mosque.
Wow. I'll be your first reader.
Thanks.
Aybars, what is the big difference between Islam and Christianity? If you could put it in one sentence, what do you think it is?
I mean, Christians, we are, you know, we believe in the deity and the death and resurrection of Jesus. And Muslims do not believe that.
Okay.
They believe that Muhammad speaks for God. Muhammad is the final, you know, the final word, right?
Yes. And what was it like growing up Muslim? How would you describe that?
I mean, it was difficult in that, you know, we were raised around all Catholics. And, you know, I had a lot of friends. I mean, that wasn't the problem. It was when, you know, there were holidays that came around or you know, other things that were going on. You would kind of butt up against their culture with the things that you were being taught, and you know, to believe.
Yeah.
You know, one thing that's actually funny is I went to Catholic school for 5 years.
Did you really?
Yeah, and my dad would, like, when I would come home, you know, it was right, we had a delicatessen in Princeton, New Jersey.
Of course you did,
right?
yeah.
All Turks do that.
Nobody says delicatessen. I feel like I've got a best friend today.
And I would come home from school, and he would essentially, I would tell him what I learned in school about, you know, Jesus, and he would say, "We don't believe that, we're Muslims." And it wasn't like an intentional deprogramming. It was trying to affirm, like, you know, what he perceived my identity in God to be.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, what is your relationship like with your family now that you are a believer? Are your parents still with you?
The good news is it's better than it ever has been.
Okay.
It's still, you know, it's still difficult. I'm the only believer.
In your whole family?
My whole family, yeah. I mean, my wife, you know, I'm married now. But my nuclear family I was born into, I'm the only one.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, is that hard? Do you feel like the black sheep of the family?
Oh, definitely.
Wow. And how does God help you with that?
I mean, he's always encouraging me. You know, one thing I have learned is that you have to just give people back to him. and,
Yes.
just remember to be faithful in what you're doing and what you're called to do. So, my heart aches for my mom, right? My heart aches for my brothers.
Yes.
And, I just wish that God would reveal himself to me, reveal himself to them in the powerful way that he revealed himself to me. And he will do that in his time,
Yes.
I have to be patient. I have to be obedient. I can't get frustrated, with what I would look at, from a human standpoint and say is inaction. It took me 23 years to wrap my head around the idea that, when I accepted Lord, I was 23 years old, to be in a position where I could do that. And, he has his time for everyone.
He does. I believe everybody gets one of those look-up moments. You were handcuffed to a bench in jail.
Right.
But it could look very different for your mom and your brothers. And I'm just going to be praying that they get a look-up moment.
Thank you. Thank you. So sweet.
You're working with fellow, Muslims, right?
Yes.
Muslims and Christians. What are you doing? I know it has to do with food, which gets me excited. Tell me about your project.
I work for an organization. We're a Christian 501c3 here in Seattle. We are called the Al-Maidah Initiative.
Wow.
We are named after the 5th chapter of the Quran. Al-Maidah means the table. And what we are trying to do is create a space where Christians and Muslims can gather together and be friends and share friendships and develop relationships and have open conversations about what both sides believe. And then from those relationships, to be able to share, in depth, right, from a place of relationship about what we believe about Jesus.
Incredible.
There's a lot of eating.
Good. Yes, that brings people together.
Yes, no, it really does.
Yes.
And we host events over Ramadan in churches. Where we invite Muslims from the local community. We put it up on Eventbrite. People do inviting. We equip those churches to be able to reach out to the Muslims in their neighborhood.
Wow.
We do that usually with like a 2-part seminar. One's on basic history and worldview of what, where Islam came from and what Muslims believe now. And then the other one is outreach strategy.
Incredible.
And then from that, we plan dinners and, other events. We don't just do those dinners over Ramadan. We do all kinds of things. We have just started a monthly potluck, one in the North End and one in the South End. And, more coming, right?
Wow. So are our Muslim neighbors receptive to this, to gathering around the table and talking?
Yes. And you would be surprised. Like, you would think that they're a lot more closed off. I think the way that I describe Islam to people who don't have a lot of experience with it is it kind of from a distance feels like cold. It's an obelisk or of some kind. It's foreign. You're afraid to kind of get up and engage with it.
Yes.
But the truth is they are people. A lot of them, some of the Muslims I talk to, they're like, I miss like the closeness that I experienced in my native country with the people around me. We don't have anyone who feels like family around here. We go and talk, they hit the Seattle freeze and they don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
So our hope is that from our events, that they will connect with people who are willing to engage them, willing to be friendly, and then that those people would eventually invite them into their home.
Yes.
Right? For a meal or, have like, hey, our kids are all play together.
Yes.
And have opportunities to actually share. I mean, my experience with Muslims, having, been raised a Muslim, was that we would watch Christians and we would see how they acted. Like, how do they act? Do they really act like they say they're supposed to act?
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Because you're always looking for some way to just be like, well, that's why I can dismiss it.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like Christians are, they say one thing and do another.
Yes.
And they are doing the same. So when you meet Christians who are, honest and authentic and willing to engage, and honestly just happy to see you and be around you, it does kind of move their hearts.
I think that's incredible. I have to find a meme on my phone because I want to ask you what kind of food that you make at this table. Okay, here it is. Cooking is love made visible. And
oh my gosh, that's so great.
And I'm like, yes, it's a bridge, right?
Yes.
So what kind of food do you serve? And do some of the people who come bring food, like you mentioned, a potluck?
Okay, so our we know that most Muslims will not eat anything that's not halal. So we ask that people bring halal food to our potlucks.
Now, what does that mean?
That is just food that has been, that has been slaughtered according to Islamic law.
Okay,
Right.
I learned something today.
Yeah, and
All right.
some Christians will be like, it's food sacrificed to an idol. Listen, there's a whole chapter in the Bible about that.
Yes.
If it violates your conscience, don't do it.
Right.
But then the other side of that is, if I were to go to Turkey and visit my mom and not eat any meat, I would be looked at like I was the craziest person in the world. It doesn't violate my conscience.
Right.
Past the kebab, right? So
I want to title this interview "Pass the Kebab." This is
So
my
great.
favorite thing so far.
that's my second book.
Yes. Yes, it is. I'll be your first reader on that one. Wow. So this is so interesting to me. The one question I came in here was for you. Have you ever had a moment of fear? Like you felt like you were afraid sharing the hope in your heart?
Once.
Mm-hmm.
It was one time I was with my cousin in Turkey.
Yeah.
And, my cousin is a very outgoing fellow, and he was a martial arts instructor, and semi-retired. So he had time during the day to just kind of go to, all of his students and people he knew. He was trying to get T-shirts for his dojo.
Yeah.
And we were sitting in one room in the city that he lives in on like the very far, like dark end of town.
Wow.
And he was espousing some very intense Islamic themes, let's just say, right?
Mhm.
But they weren't like jihadists or anything
Right,
like
right, right.
that. It was just, he was very devout.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, he asked me what I believed, and I tried to explain it. And my cousin gratefully cut me off because my Turkish is atrocious. So,
Yeah.
just said that I worked in humanitarian work.
Yeah.
So, I took that as the Lord, and the conversation shifted. But
Yes.
I think in that moment, like they would have been very upset.
Sure.
With what I was saying at that point.
Yeah.
We have been overseas, and we have done ministry in other countries and experienced that. That moment was a little different for me, though, because I was on my own. I didn't have a team.
Right.
I was just there and,
Yeah.
at the mercy of whoever's, store I was sitting in at that time. And who knows what would have happened if he started yelling and people started coming out.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure God protected you in that moment.
Yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, sometimes less is more, and saying less is more important
Yes.
than saying
Now,
more.
I've heard stories of Jesus appearing to Muslims. I know you're saying Muslims. I need to say that. I always say Muslim. I don't know
You
if
can say Muslim, it's fine.
Okay. So I have heard stories of Jesus appearing to Muslims or Muslims around the world. Have you heard those stories?
So when I accepted the Lord, I had a very powerful visitation myself.
Wow.
I accepted the Lord in what's called a Messianic synagogue. If your listeners aren't familiar with that, they're Jews that believe in Jesus. At a time when I was recommitting my life back to Islam. And during the message, the rabbi essentially just said, Yeshua won't let Saddam Hussein bomb Tel Aviv. This is 97.
Wow.
And I just remember thinking, who's Yeshua? And what I now know to be the power of God, the presence of God, just came in so thick and powerful, and I couldn't raise my head. I was telling, the fellows I did the podcast with about if I had looked up, I would have seen feet. Like I didn't feel like I could dare to lift my head up. My story is actually tame compared to others. Oh, in that moment, he said, "I'm Yeshua." So he introduced himself to me like by his Hebrew name in a Messianic synagogue at a time when I was going back to Islam. Crazy, right?
I love it.
We have people's stories that come up. I have a friend, and she was in a car wreck in Saudi Arabia, and she was dying. And then a figure appeared to her and said, I want you to go to Seattle, and I want you to meet with my boss, James, who she knew, and he'll explain things to you there. So she wound up accepting the Lord. We also have another friend who was a Palestinian Christian who was, essentially being tormented by Hamas for being a Christian. He was a former UN employee, and he got led to the Lord by people who believed in heresy. he spent 600 days locked up in a room by himself, trying to and then they exposed their heresy to him and he lost his mind. He was just like, I can't believe this. I got to get out of here. What have I done? And then he says, Lord, if you're real, show me who you really are. And in that moment, he said that Jesus appeared to him and his face was lit up like the moon. Those are his words. And he said, I'm the truth, follow me. So we hear these stories. Sometimes it's dreams. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just, people who are hungry and they ask questions about, the world that they live in and how, the Islam is not meeting their needs. And in other instances, it's something powerful and prophetic.
Wow, truly miraculous. I am so encouraged to hear your stories, and I hope you'll come back and tell more on the morning show.
Anytime.
Aybars, if somebody wants to get in touch with you, maybe meet you at your table, what do they do?
You can email me. My name is a mouthful. So it's aybars@al-maidah.org. Or you can just get on our news list. And that's our newsletter is www.al-maidah/mail.
Wow.
Or you can find me much easier and a personal connection. You can, I don't know if you guys do Instagram tags. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
I'm at The Wandering Turk on Instagram.
At The Wandering Turk. I can't wait to read your book.
Thank you. I can't wait to write it.
God bless you, my friend. I feel like I've got a new brother in Christ. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh.